Hey there, my name is David Walter, and I am a counselor at Elizabeth Layton Center in Paola, Kansas, and I'm here today with Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm also a counselor at Elizabeth Layton Center, and we're excited to get to meet with you guys and talk with you today.
Absolutely. So today we are going to be talking a bit about the topic of teen relationships, healthy relationships, and dating.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
All right. So we're going to be talking about this. I want to just jump into some statistics first as we're covering this topic. So 64% of teens in this Pew Research Center survey have never been in a romantic relationship. Only 35% of teens have been in a relationship before. I think that this is kind of a shocker for some people when they're going through and they think about those teenage years. It seems like everybody's in a relationship. But really what we see from the data is that only 35% of teenagers have some type of romantic experience. Either they're in a serious relationship, they're in a relationship, but it's not that serious, or they're currently not dating. So you can see the breakdown here. It is a little different by age group. So like 13 and 14-year-olds, that number goes down to only 20% have had some sort of dating experience. And then that 15 to 17-year-old range, right up to the cusp of 18 years old, it goes up to 44%. So about 56% of folks, even at the age of 17, still haven't had a dating experience to that point.
Yeah, and I think that information is just very interesting. I think the age breakdown makes a lot of sense, but I do think, like you said, it is kind of shocking when we think about teens that not as many as everybody thinks are dating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There can definitely be that own pressure that we put on ourselves. You know, if we think back to our teenage years, to be able to be in a relationship, it seems like everybody's dating somebody, and the reality of that is that maybe the people around us are, or maybe we can kind of get that clouded vision. But the reality is that 65% down to 56%, like those people just aren't in a relationship. So why are we talking about this today then? Why are we talking about teen dating relationships? Because these things are really important. It's super important because relationships are going to give us a foundation for that next level in our life. So why are some teens choosing to date? People date for all sorts of different reasons. They date for connection with another person or closeness. Also for communication skills and interpersonal skills. This can actually help develop healthy tools for communication later in life for not only like adult relationships, but for work or school or college or family. It also helps to build this emotional growth within us. When we have to set ourselves aside for a little bit and focus on somebody else, the relationship is not all about us anymore. All of a sudden, we have this other focus that we have to grow. And teenage years can be a great time to learn that to prepare you for later on in life.
Yeah, and I think, relationships can be pretty tricky. So I think there is some like trial and error in that. And, it does help teach you a lot just about dealing with other people and even about yourself too, like you were saying with that identity piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who I am is so important. That question for not only teens to answer, but for everybody to be able to say, who I am is independent of a relationship. But then who I am inside of that relationship is also really important because I know how I'm going to interact with somebody, what parts of me are really jive with somebody else, or are parts that I need to work on within myself.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings us back to, how do we know if we are ready for a relationship too?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think like before getting into a relationship, because it is a big decision, a lot of kids or a lot of teens are saying, I don't really want one right now. But I think it is very important to go ahead and work on loving yourself first. And I know that's kind of cliche and it's said all the time, but if you don't love yourself and respect yourself, it is kind of hard for somebody else to understand why they should love you and respect you as well. And so knowing your strengths and your positive qualities makes a big difference as well. And knowing what your beliefs and values are. So how do you find somebody that matches those beliefs and values if you aren't aware of them? And it's really important to know what your own interests and goals are too. And if you can find somebody else with a lot of similar interests, that ends up helping. And it's, at the end of the day, it's okay to still be single too.
Yeah, you brought up that topic of your own beliefs and values, and like that's so important, and I think also really cool at this time, because as a teenager you're trying to figure out, what do I really believe in and what do I want to stand for. I think nowadays more than ever, those are questions that teens, that you guys might be asking yourself. What are some issues I want to get involved with? And so when you ask yourself those questions and you get prepared, Ellie, it really sounds like that is what is helping people to be more successful, because they're going to know who they connect with and who shares that similar belief system.
Yeah. And, being able to share that belief system with somebody is so important for that connection piece too.
What's the old adage, opposites attract, right? So opposites attract, it sounds like this is saying like opposites attract maybe for a little bit, but it's really important for a sustained relationship, or for a healthy relationship, to have more in common than not.
Yeah, and so you can have different interests, like maybe I like football and you just like baseball and you can't stand football. But, at the end of the day, like being both able to value the same things and say like, oh no, honesty is really important to me too. That's what helps create that good foundation for a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's important to know what good qualities of a relationship are and what helps make a healthy relationship. So one of the big things is really starting out a relationship slow and not rushing into it, because you really want to develop that friendship first. Because if you can't even be friends with somebody, how are you going to end up being in a relationship with somebody and calling them your boyfriend or girlfriend too?
Yeah.
Another big component is that privacy. So being able to have parts that you don't have to share everything with that person, and they don't have to know everything. They don't have to have the password to your phone and etc. Like you guys are allowed to each have your own separate spaces too. And that goes with that independence. Like you can have your own friends, you can have your own interests, you can have your own activities you do without that person, because the whole relationship is not your whole world. You're still an individual too. And having like equality and respect and honesty. So like your opinion's valued and you value your significant, like your boyfriend or your girlfriend's opinion as well. Like each person has room to talk, and it's okay if you guys have different opinions as well. Taking responsibility, because nobody's perfect. So even in a relationship, it'd be great if everybody never made mistakes, but I make mistakes. And so I'm sure David might occasionally make mistakes too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But like having the responsibility and being able to take that accountability and apologize and fess up to it and say, hey, I'm going to work on this next time, and I'm going to try not to like accidentally hurt your feelings again. And also having those rules for your relationship, being able to set those boundaries. Like maybe you're not comfortable with holding hands in public, or maybe you don't want to be Facebook official, and that's completely fine. And having that person that you're in that relationship with really respect that too.
Yeah, I'm really interested when we talk about this topic, about that idea of like a friendship first and then a relationship. I heard that a lot, like as a teenager, like just like be friends. Why do you have to put a label on it? Or why do you have to be more than that right now? But it sounds like there is something more than just my mom or dad telling me that I should just be friends and I shouldn't date anyone right now. Is that right? Like there's something more to it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that you can't ever put a label on it or that it can't like end up developing that relationship, but if you don't have things in common and you can't trust this person to communicate with them on just like a basic friendship level to start off with, it's really kind of like you're stacking it on like a really flimsy and not steady foundation, and it's likely going to crumble too.
Yeah.
And so knowing that
there was some prudence to those words, it sounds like.
Yes, I definitely think so. And just being able to like laugh and share like interests with somebody too. Like relationships aren't romantic all the time.
Yeah.
And so knowing those healthy qualities helps us kind of identify what we're really looking for. And unfortunately, if all relationships were healthy, might not be having this talk too. But sometimes there's things that go on in relationships that aren't okay and that aren't safe, and that we need to be able to recognize and look out for too. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we end up calling these red flags. And so these red flags are just kind of this way to say, hey, if you see these are things you really need to look into that could potentially mean that you're in a relationship that's not safe and healthy. And so kind of the opposite of taking that slow, really feeling pressured or rushed. So diving in head first and not really able to take it slow or like just get to know each other before committing to one another.
Right, that pace of relationship again is really important.
Yeah, it is. And someone who's really controlling, because I know we talked about that privacy, but someone who limits who you go out with, who wants to know everything that you post on social media, or who you're talking to all the time, or needs to have the password to your phone, or any of those things, like that can signal really some potential signs that the relationship's not healthy as well. Jealous is one of those that's kind of tricky too, because jealousy a lot of times we're like, oh, it's nice because they really care about me and they don't want me talking to this person because they really like me. But when somebody's overly jealous, it ends up like being really, really toxic for a relationship. Same if they're being manipulative, like I'm not gonna talk to you if you don't do this for me, or if you can't make this, I'm not gonna respond to your calls, or I'm ignoring you because you didn't text me back like 2 hours later after I wanted to talk to you. And any sort of put downs or name calling is really a sign that it's not a safe and healthy relationship too. Like if I'm telling David that, man, I think that shirt looks atrocious on you, like ends up hurting us a lot. And I obviously don't mean that, David. But
I appreciate that.
Having a place where you feel safe and you feel appreciated is really important. And somebody who isn't going to blame you for every single thing that's going wrong, or threaten to leave you if something does go wrong too. Another really, really big sign that something's not safe is if somebody threatens to hurt themselves or to hurt somebody else if you break up with them or you leave them. And somebody who's not respectful of your boundaries and pushes against a rule you had set. Like if you're not ready for a certain part of a relationship, they need to be able to respect that and say that that's okay, because that's the boundary and that's where you're at too. And the biggest red flag too is if there's any sort of fear, if you're afraid of like saying something to a person, or if you're afraid of doing something that'll upset them, or especially if you're afraid for your safety, like that's a huge sign that this relationship isn't healthy and safe.
Yeah, I hear this theme in several of those of if I have to continue to say no, 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 no about the same requests over and over, that might be a sign that my boundaries are being tested or pushed by this other person. Something that I established, either my boyfriend or my girlfriend right now, is trying to push past that. Maybe get me to leave some of my values at the door. And that's really interesting, because on the slide before we talked about those healthy relationships and like having values that coincide or connect with one another is so important. So when you hear yourself saying those things, maybe that's something to look out for.
Right, for sure. Because if we both care about each other, like we're going to respect that, like, you don't feel comfortable doing these certain things. And that shows that we've got that mutual respect. But if somebody's continuing to say, hey, your boundary doesn't make sense, or I don't like it, or whatnot, and can't respect it, a lot of times it means they don't have that same respect for you as a person too.
Yeah, so when this happens to someone, Ellie, and they start noticing, I've got all these red flags, they're starting to stack up. Maybe it's one, and then another, maybe it's some lying, and then it's pushing my boundary, and then I see some threatening or manipulating. What should I do?
I think that's a great time to go ahead and reach out to somebody. So, a parent or a guardian is always a good place. And, sometimes we don't feel like comfortable talking with our parents about stuff, and that's okay. But, at the end of this presentation too, we've got a bunch of different resources for everybody to be able to look at and use if they need to talk to somebody.
Right on. Okay. So we have this question here. Why is all of this important? Why do we even talk about this? There's a lot of reasons why we're going to why we talk about this today. We covered at the beginning this backwards notion that we all have, that teens are in relationships and they're in and out and in and out, and everyone's dating, and that's not true. Why are we talking about it? Because there's benefits to a dating relationship. You don't have to go into one, but there's benefits from it. And I even want to go a step further and say there's benefits from a healthy friendship as well. So the things that we just talked about, those are important to apply to a friendship too. I can't imagine being in a friendship with someone who's pushing my boundaries or sending up red flags. I want to be able to connect with that person as well.
Yeah. And making sure that any sort of relationship with anybody, romantic or just friendship, is healthy is big, because in order to get the benefits out of having a relationship, it's got to be healthy. Otherwise, we just end up with a lot of disadvantages and extra stress and hurt, rather than being able to reap the benefits of being close with somebody and having that support.
Yeah, absolutely. And so keeping an eye on those things, this is so important to go back and to be thinking about, what are the healthy qualities of this relationship? Did we connect on some level? Do I feel supported? Am I allowed to express myself emotionally? Am I allowed to set limits and boundaries? And then talking about, like, we have to prepare for the relationship on our own time too. I have to know that I'm ready and that I love myself in this moment to come there. I have to know that I'm okay listening to boundaries being set as well.
And boundaries are really tricky too, and it takes some practice. And so having these relationships and, occasionally making a mistake, like, this is where we get to really make sure that we're getting good at respecting other people's boundaries and also respecting our own too.
For sure. So that's why we wanted to present this today, because all of this information can be really important. You might use it right now. You might be in a relationship and wanting to use this info right now. You might be in a good friendship and you want to use it right now. This might be information you tuck away and you're like, I really want to remember this because it's going to be extremely beneficial for me down the road. Whatever the case you find yourself in, if you're dating, hey, you're part of the maybe part of like the smaller percentage of people right now. If you're not dating, that's perfectly normal right now as well. Focus on those friendships and building up those social skills and communication skills and emotion skills, and have fun. Friendships are supposed to be fun. Dating relationships where we explore ourselves, they're supposed to be founded on some sort of fun, that we're enjoying each other's company. That's why we spend so much time together.
Yeah. And this is just great information to be able to relay to other people too if they need it. And especially these resources for if anybody finds themselves in a relationship that doesn't feel right, or they feel stuck and really need to talk to somebody, knowing that these resources are available. And knowing that if you need to come seek some counseling services, ELC is open for you too. And so these are free resources that you can use at any time if necessary, or you can end up handing over to a friend too.
For sure. Well, Ellie, it was awesome getting to sit down and talk to you about this today. I know this is an important topic for everyone to hear about and for us to even talk about as counselors.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we were able to get together and be able to share this information. That is so helpful, and I really wish I had a lot of this information as a teen too. And so hopefully this can be so useful and beneficial for everyone too.
For sure. All right, we'll talk to y'all later.
Perfect. Thank you guys.